We are live streaming with AJ Hackett. AJ, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us in this very strange and uncertain time.
No, it's a pleasure, Pat. It's been a long time coming, this interview, hasn't it? But
Yeah.
at least you managed to nail me down in quarantine in Auckland.
Well, look, this is not like a live breaking, kind of news podcast or anything, but as we are broadcasting this just after 1 o'clock on the Thursday, we found out, of course, 48 hours ago that there was more cases in New Zealand, and we've just found out, literally just now, that the Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, has reported 13 new community cases on Thursday and one more in managed isolation. The community cases include a student from Mount Albert Grammar. All 13 confirmed cases in the community are in Auckland, and all are linked to the 4 initial community cases. Coronavirus could have been in the community for weeks, says Professor Sean Hendy from the University of Auckland. So that's on some ways, that's kind of terrifying. It's kind of terrifying. Well, I don't want to be over dramatic, because there's no point sort of freaking people out any more than they already are. We don't need any of that. But yeah, to go from no coronavirus to 4 cases to 13 in the space of 36 hours, 48 hours, whatever it's been, is pretty terrifying.
Yeah, well, it's I think it's still early days yet, isn't it, with this whole corona thing around the world? And I think New Zealand's done an amazing job to keep it out of the community for just over 100 days. And you've got to expect the odd little glitch to sort of come through. And I think they've done the right thing. They've nailed it down really fast. From 4, they're attacking it logically, methodically, and smartly. And so hopefully it'll just be a short disruption to the freedom Kiwis been experiencing over the last few months, which has been inspirational to people all around the planet. Everyone's jealous,
Yeah.
So it's pretty good, really, and I think everyone's going to observe this and go, oh, hang on, that's the way to manage it as well. Like when it comes back, don't panic buy, don't rush around freaking out, just embrace it. Just do the right thing, wear your mask, social space, and stay on top of your mind.
Yeah, it's so true. And I guess what's interesting to me now, obviously I'm in Dunedin, so I'm 1,500 kilometres away from Auckland for people watching this from outside of New Zealand on a completely different island. Doesn't mean there's not cases here, but what will be interesting now is if we can quickly and efficiently get on top of it. Last week, I think I told this story yesterday. Last week, I had a bit of a, not a freak out moment, but maybe what I'd call a bit of an awakening moment, because I saw what happened in Vietnam. And for people who aren't aware, Vietnam was very similar to us. They'd had 0 deaths and they'd had 99 days of no community transmission, I should say. And then they got some cases and then they had some deaths. And I just thought, well, I guess if you're talking statistically speaking, the longer we go without a case, probably the more likelihood that something might sneak in over the border or sneak through in an asymptomatic person working on a plane or something like that. And so I ordered a few things. I ordered some masks and I ordered some more gloves and I ordered some more cleaning products, and they turned up on the day that we got told about the 4 new cases. So, it's one of the things that I'm kind of going, it was nothing but me sort of going, well, if I hopefully won't need these. If we don't need them, then I can use the cleaning product over the next 2 years. If I do need them, then they'll be there. I'd rather put $50 into something now and not need it than, in 3 weeks' time or in 5 weeks' time or whatever, there be none of them left in the country. And who knew that like 5 days later it would be that situation? It's crazy.
No, it is really it's a very interesting time to be on the planet, where it's just so unpredictable and so hard to plan with real certainty or into the future. But the only certainty we've got, I think, is it's uncertain. So that's kind of certain, So we're managing it pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. And look, I mean, I guess you're kind of I don't know if testament to that is the right word. Pardon the voice. You can hear the voice. I was actually sick with a cold last week. Ironically, if I had the cold last week, this week, I'd be off for a test, no question whatsoever. Which is why I heard the story about the four family members going to Rotorua and one of them having symptoms, I think it was. And part of me is empathetic because last week I had a cold. I didn't have a fever, but I certainly had a cough and a bit of a runny nose. Yep. I was pretty confident it was just a cold. And one of the reasons I was confident it was a cold was because there's no community transmission. And so this member from South Auckland of the family who went to Rotorua with symptoms, if she had he or she, I don't even know who it is, I don't know why I assume it's a she, he or she had the same logic, you'd go, I've got a bit of a cold, but we've got no community transmission. And so I guess I'm empathetic a bit to that, even though I don't think it was smart in hindsight. I am slightly empathetic to that because, what if I had have been, which I'm obviously not because it took 3 days to get over it. What if I had something last week, but I'd made that decision? So yeah, I want to be gracious to them and not beat up on the original four families, because I think we were all in a bit of false sense of security. And I was going to say, when you say how we handle this well, I hope what comes from this is that we get on top of it quickly, even if we've got a 2 or 4 or 6 week, lockdown again. But we get on top of it quickly, and then until we see a vaccine, we don't drop our standards of washing our hands, face coverings if we're in tight places, even without, community transmission. I think that's the wake-up call, that we need to actually treat this like it's always here, even when technically the medical people are saying there's no community transmission until we get that vaccine.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And just, like this, it's the whole art, it's just call it preventative maintenance or managing the risk, you're better off to prevent it than wait for the crash,
I wonder, I guess the question now is what's going to happen next. And I'm looking at stuff.co.nz at the moment, and they're talking about level 3 until midnight Friday, the rest of New Zealand level 2 until midnight Friday. I can't imagine, I guess I don't want to be one of those people who is, because I'm getting angry already with people who are, the Facebook post. Everyone knows what we're talking about. People who are saying that this is about the government trying to seize control and cancel an election and yada, yada, yada. Oh. So I don't want to be a part of that, but I can't help but wonder, will Auckland be in level 4 from Saturday? Yeah, I can't help but wonder. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting to see where to from here.
Oh, well, it'll be interesting. I'm sure we're going to find out over the next 24 hours whether it stops at another 13 or whether it jumps to the 30. And I think that's going to be the trick. And they've got to. They can't muck around. They've got to pull out the stops. And it's unfortunate the rugby probably won't happen on this weekend. But hey, that's it. Hopefully the boys can still play without the fans. Great to see that competition sort of finished. But hey, this is our life for the medium term. We've got to we've just got to be patient and work together positively. Not politically, it's like, hey, I don't care whether you're a National supporter or Labour supporter. It's about what's best for the country and the people first, And so I'd like to think we're going to just figure out better and better ways to manage these outbreaks when they come, because this won't be the last. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's going to be more. And, I was just impressed. I only got to the country 10 or 12 days ago, and to see how they reacted to this so quickly and, just decisively, I was really impressed, So, I think most Kiwis don't want the coronavirus to be running around in the community. They'd rather lock down for a little bit longer and see it gone.
I think you're right. I think you're right, and I think that like what we see in America is maybe proportionally there's the same amount of nutters out there thinking that coronavirus is not real or it's the government set up or whatever. But in America, when it's 5% of the population, it's 15 million people that can make an impact. If it's 5% of the people in New Zealand, purely based on the size of our population, it probably can't quite do the same damage. But yeah, I'm interested to get your thoughts as well, because one of the reasons it took us a long time to connect was you got caught up, as I understand, with some of those New Zealanders who actually couldn't come back to New Zealand at one stage, didn't you? Because you were offshore and you wanted to come back and some of the flights got cancelled. Tell us about that experience and what happened with that for you, because it felt like it took you about an extra month to get back to New Zealand than you would have ideally liked.
Well, it was actually nearly 5 months, Pat, because
wow.
I left France early mid-March, and I was flying via Indonesia. We've got a resort in the Gili Islands off Lombok and Bali there, and so I was stopping there for about a week, and then carrying on to New Zealand. And my partner Susie, who we were getting married in New Zealand on the 1st of May, she was flying via the States. So she got to New Zealand, I got to Indonesia, then everything turned to custard. So I ended up being locked down at our resort, which was actually really nice. And then I had 4 months with my kids there, which was great. And all of my companies around the world all shut down through that period. So we had to put together a whole plan on how to make sure they were closed properly, that we didn't lose them whilst they're being shut, and reorganise how we reopened and various steps. And so it was actually, in many ways, it was a blessing in disguise. And, for us, it was actually kind of timely, in that it's not often you get the opportunity to stop what you're doing and really reflect on what's important and what the priorities are.
Yeah.
And that's what we were able to do, So, 4.5 months later, many delayed flights over the last month. I went through 3 different airlines and I finally got in here on the 1st of August. And so normally, fingers crossed, I'll get a negative swab result today, and I'll be on a plane to Christchurch on Saturday morning.
So where are you? Auckland, Wellington at the moment?
I'm in Auckland. Yep. Yes, I'm in a hotel in Auckland at the moment. And so I'll just go directly out of here early Saturday, touch wood, and be on an aeroplane down to Christchurch by lunchtime.
So how long? So how long has it been since you've seen your partner?
Just over 5 months.
Wow.
Crazy, eh? It's a long time, man. And it's been very difficult for her, like being in quarantine or lockdown, as you call it here, by herself, which has been really, that's a real challenge. I feel sorry for anybody anywhere in the world that experienced that, but and I think that's what's so hard for people when there's the it's just sitting out there. Oh, are we going to go into another lockdown? At what level? And because it's nice to have freedom, and freedom to move. And so I'm excited to be back in New Zealand. We'll get the rest of the winter. My daughter got here a few weeks ago, so she went through quarantine. Now she's training in the Cadrona, Wanaka area with the skiing. So no, it's all good.
So how's the life been in the hotel? We've had some people trying to escape. Other people sort of reference it as a jail sentence in some ways. Obviously, those people have never been to jail. But how's it been for you? Just sort of being locked up in a hotel for 12 days.
Well, I've been so busy over the last 4 or 5 months. And coming in here was just great. I got in on a Saturday morning, and there's a game of rugby on the Saturday, another one on the Sunday, and I just stayed in bed for the first 2 days, slept, watched TV, because I haven't seen Kiwi TV for about a year. And so it was actually kind of fun, and then so since then I've been full on just catching up with a lot of work. And it's quite different time zones, so I'm not really used to those in terms of dealing with our sites in other countries
Right.
around the world. So I've got early starts, late finishes. So I've actually been working really hard. So I've actually enjoyed it because there's no disruption in the hotel.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm apart from phone calls and stuff. There's no people here in it, so I've actually enjoyed the time. So it has been quite painless, and even the swab tests, I was a bit freaked out about those, but they kind of tickle,
Yeah.
they make you want to sneeze, But no, but I am looking forward to getting out, obviously. But it's gone really fast, and everyone's been super professional, and it's just been good. You feel like everyone's onto it, and everyone actually cares, and that's important.
I think it's always a good what's the word? It's like it's good to keep things in check as well. I don't know if you heard this. I'll show you something. Steven Adams, the New Zealand basketball player in America, Steven Adams, he was sort of asked a similar question about, how are you guys handling, being in lockdown? How's it going for you? How are you handling it? Is it okay? And he had a fantastic response to that.
Mentally, how's the adjustment been to dealing with life, constantly living with your teammates and not really having an opportunity to get away, and just overall your thoughts on life inside the bubble right now?
It's all good, mate. Let's be clear, mate. This is not Syria, mate. You know what I mean? Like it's not that hard.
So his response is, it's not Syria. And it's like, it's a bunch of 7-foot millionaires living in a Disney resort. And Steven Adams, that classic Kiwiism, he's just like, dude, it's, we're not living in Syria. We're all right. It might be a bit boring at times, but we're all right. I thought that was beautiful. There's nothing like Steven Adams being interviewed by the American press to bring things back to a state of normality. Hey, when you spent 4 months over at the resort, was it clear and safe? Like, was there no COVID in that community? Was the resort shut, or was it still operating?
No, when I arrived there, it was starting to wind down because the corona was starting to move around the world, and the warnings were going out. So many people were leaving, and then the government shut the island down, and so everybody moved out, and so we closed it to the public, but we actually took the opportunity to focus on actually doing major work around the place, because in Indonesia there's no such thing as the unemployment benefit,
right,
or government relief or anything like that. So our resort is super dependent on the cool people that we've been employing there for many years, and our culture. So we've got to keep that together.
Yeah. So
we just deployed them into gardening, building work, and they'd just stay there for longer periods of time, keep them all together, feed everybody, and then they go back to Lombok, which is an island, the main sort of island, about 7 kilometres away. Zero corona on all the 3 Gili islands.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple of quite big cities on Lombok. They've got some corona there, but they've actually been managing it incredibly well in Indonesia and following the rules. Most people are masked up. They've the mosques were essentially closed,
right,
to larger congregations of people, and so it's been actually quite well managed in those smaller areas. And obviously Jakarta and Surabaya and those big cities. Anywhere in the world, big cities have struggled, and but no, fortunately it's still okay. And we're just very careful, but we're also lucky in that we've got a large property, so there's a lot of space around it. So social distancing and that sort of thing is just not a problem. It's not like you're in a tiny little hotel or squeezed together in rooms. And yeah,
sounds quite idyllic. Sounds like you kind of had a resort to yourself with a few of your workers, and you hung out with your whānau and Did a bit of physical work, building some walls and planting some gardens. Sounds like a lovely 4 months.
Oh, it was great. I ended up. I also there's really great diving there, so I got my advanced open water diving ticket.
Oh,
and
perfect. That's great. So you did a masterclass while you were there. That's perfect.
Oh no, we're a bit lucky there, but it's it's a nice part of the world,
Hey, I'm intrigued. You've been talking about resorts around the world and that. Now you're not associated with New Zealand bungee jumping anymore. Have you sold that? Are you no longer part of AJ Hackett New Zealand Limited, or are you just working elsewhere but you're still like a part ownership? How does that work?
No, like Henry Van Ash and I created the company 32 years ago almost.
Mm-hmm.
And about 20 odd years ago, we decided to go our own ways and split our interests. So yeah, Henry kept the New Zealand side of it, and I kept the overseas stuff.
Right.
And I've been focused overseas for the last 20 years. But Henry and I have a great relationship. He's like pretty much an uncle to my daughter here.
Yep.
Keeps an eye on her for me when she's skiing and playing in the mountains, and so it still has my name on the company. The company's trades as AJ Hackett Bungy, but it's actually called Bungy New Zealand, and they're interested in Auckland, Taupo, and Queenstown. And but no, they do an amazing job. It's such an iconic company and brand here in New Zealand and around the world now, and will continue to be so for a very, very long time.
I'm interested as well because, as you say, your name's still associated with it, and it's like any company that happens, whether it be Smith & Co.'s or whatever, the names of the originators often live on long after their association with the company. Does that sometimes, because there was a little bit of conjecture about the New Zealand guys getting some kind of grant for the government. I don't know too much about it, and then I actually don't have a problem with it myself, but there was a little bit of, why is this company, and then there's your name attached to it. Do you ever get any kind of blowback from that sort of thing where you have to go, there's actually nothing to do with me?
Well, for me personally, not so much, because I'm not actually in the country yet. I'm in quarantine. But no, I'm sure I'm going to get a little bit more exposed to that over the coming weeks and months when I'm out. But my partner Susie, often people come up to her because they know we're together, and but it was well, actually, I'm no longer involved in the company, but. Yeah. I think the government did the right thing.
I agree.
Like Henry and his partners have provided over $100 million to the government in taxes, PAYE, GST over the last 10 years. And, they're serious contributors to community, have employed many, many people. And there's so many companies that rely on Bungy New Zealand to continue, and it's been incredible for tourism in New Zealand over the last 30 years. We essentially gave adventure tourism the kickstart it needed, and now New Zealand's synonymous with adventure and adrenaline and cool, adventurous people, and people come here from all over the world to experience. And I think, if you look at it, it's like a little wee tax rebate. At $5 million it's a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things, to do with what they've given back, it's a nothing. It's a few grains of salt, And,
I agree.
It's important for New Zealand that we look after the tourism sector. It's critical, and there's many great companies, whether they're big or small, that need some help and some confidence that everyone's in behind them. And and that's been so amazing with what's happened recently. No international tourism allowed into the country, but New Zealanders have been getting out and really making the most of what we've got to offer in the country. And it's you know, so the ski fields, for example, in the South Island had record numbers through the school holidays, and you know, it's been great. You know, and I think this is you know, hugely interesting longer term. There's a lot more of the money that we spend outside of the country is actually being spent inside the country.
Yeah,
So it's kind of creating this funny other little economic sort of bubble, positive bubble, you know.
Yeah, and look, I guess this is all the conversations that's now going to happen. That, and I know people like, you know, Sir John Key and that have come out going, we need to open up our borders and we need to get back to business. And I think what there is it's finding a balance. We're not shutting the world down because we need the money needs to go around the economy, but not necessarily opening up to what it was, because as we've now found out in the last 48 hours, COVID is a tricky little bugger. And COVID will get its way in no matter what any country does. No country has kept it out. We've kept it out for longer than anybody, and now it's a matter of locking back down. I often think of the economy like a household, and I know it's a little bit naive, but I think, you know, sometimes in times of trial, let's say a family has a one-income family, which is not untypical, and the earner loses their job. And so what they do is they go to the bank and they go, give us 10 grand against our mortgage to get through the next few months while we're reassessing and refitting up. And so I think about New Zealand and I think I'm okay. And I actually chatted with Gareth Morgan on the podcast a few weeks ago. And I said, I'm okay if the government comes to us and says, you know, taxes over the next 10 years are going to go up, let's say 1 cent in the dollar to cover what we have to borrow during this COVID time. If they come out and tell me that, the government says taxes will be going up, but the reason they're going up is for us to get through this and everyone be safe and healthy and businesses to be supported and, you know, people who can't earn to be supported, I'd be like, sign me up. I'm in for it. It's fine. I'm okay with that. But the flip side of that is people are like, no more tax, no more tax. I want to, you know, where are we getting this money from? Why are we doing all this borrowing? Whereas I'm more, well, it makes sense to borrow. That's what you do when you're in financial strife. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. No, well, I think that, you know, like for me, the whole thing is this is about an investment in the future. And in any investment, you don't get a return immediately.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is. And what we're actually doing is very, very smart here. And you will find the demand for New Zealand is going to go through the roof. And the trick we've got to figure out now is how to do this sustainably.
Yep.
Without screwing up what we've actually got, you know, and improving on what we've got. So getting rid of the rodents and the bloody wilding trees and some of the stuff that is actually impacting our environment, sorting out sewage waste management properly.
Yep.
While we can, like, this is a great opportunity to do it. You know, there's plenty of people that need work and there's some great initiatives out there. And I think it's just like, hey, we'll get it done now because it's going to be extremely busy in New Zealand in a few years' time. You know, so get set up properly for it. And that's where you get your return.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you're right. And I was thinking in the last few weeks, different now because we've got another issue of COVID to deal with, but I was also thinking, imagine if we opened up our borders to people to come in, but there was like a minimum 6-month visa. You could only come in for a minimum of 6 months, and you had to do 2 or 3 weeks in isolation when you came in, and that was at your cost. I just thought, imagine the wealthy individuals from around the world who have got money to burn, who don't need to go to work. They're millionaires and billionaires from around the world who might go, let's go on holiday in New Zealand for 10 months then. We'll pay for it all ourselves. We'll pay for our isolation. And it might be another way that the money can go into the economy. As I say, different now because COVID's back, but thinking about ways to get money into the economy. And I guess what I hear you hinting at is in a few years' time, let's say we all hope that this is taken care of and there's a vaccine or whatever it is, we as New Zealand are just on the top of everybody's radar for, you know, a safe, healthy, you know, place to live outside a lot of the troubles of the rest of the world.
Oh, totally, Pat. Like, like we're in an incredibly good position. And it's a funny thing. Like, obviously New Zealand's a long way away from many, the bigger population centres of around the world. But you've got to remember the middle class around the world is actually getting bigger.
Yeah.
And there is actually more disposable income. Obviously, this is a little bit of a glitch at the moment, but many countries are actually powering through this. And, like we have a site on, different examples, but saying in Russia, it's breaking all of the records at the moment because Putin's not allowing Russians to leave Russia. So they're having to spend their money locally. And, like it finds its own way around, like money and demand and where people want to go. But there's many people would love to be able to hang out in this country, especially if they knew, they could come down here for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Hassle free. Like we've got incredible wine, great food, great stuff to do, lovely people, Yeah.
This is your Russian site. For people who are watching, they'll know this. People who are listening, this is the Russian site?
Yeah, this is the one in Sochi.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's there
you go. Madness. Oh goodness. So you walk on a rope bridge out to the launch platform. Well, I say rope, but suspension,
Yeah, when we built this, it was the world's longest suspended walkway. It's over 440 meters long. The big jump in the middle, that guy's jumping out of there now. See that little wet white pod in the middle?
Yeah.
207 meters above the river. And there's a couple of bungees here. The world's biggest swing. That one there's 170 swing.
The thing that one of the ones that I've watched recently that freaks me out most of all is there is I don't think it's an organised thing, but there's these extreme sport nutty kind of climbers, free climbers and stuff. They'll get to a point and they'll just jump off wearing just a rope attached to their waist. It's madness. I don't get it. So I've got your site up right now. When I say I don't get it, it's because I'm a coward. You're in. So you do the global stuff. So you're in. Let's bring this up and show people. Australia, China, Russia, France, and Singapore. This is all you, AJ Hackett, not the New Zealand version. This is all your own thing.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that's you going off the Eiffel Tower. Was that 88?
Yeah. No, we're in discussions with them at the moment. Hope to do a little event there next year.
At the Eiffel Tower?
Legally this time.
Right. Well, I was going to say, when was the last time you bungee jumped, you yourself?
I was in Normandy earlier this year.
Yeah. But
I've been away from sight. See, I left France in March, and I've been in Indonesia, and we don't have a site there. And now I'm in quarantine. So when I get to Queenstown, I'll go down and have a leap down there at the Parallel Bridge or out at the Nevis or something like that. That'll be fun. I need to do it every now and then.
Is that right?
Just in the head,
Well,
it's great.
It's kind of, New Zealand's sort of known for the extreme sport, and a lot of people tie it back to bungee. Obviously, you look at, it's the Pentecost Islands up in Vanuatu. They jump off towers with vines attached to their ankles and that sort of thing. But did you guys actually invent this, or were you just the guys that figured out how to kind of mass market it?
Basically, there was the people in Vanuatu. They were the inventors of jumping out of things with something tied to you, and if you didn't have something tied to you, you would die. Yeah. So they've been doing that for maybe a couple of 100 years, quite successfully. But then some guys in England out of the Oxford University had this club, and full of crazy guys, and they saw this and decided to try to figure out how they could do it with rubber. And so they were the first people to actually invent bungee jumping with rubber. But then myself and a mate up here in Auckland, worked out we worked out our own system, and then Henry and I really developed that properly so we could actually commercialize it and do it safely. So we've been kind of managing the risk ever since, and now we've jumped over 4 million customers around the world in the last 32 years.
Wow.
And developed many other cool products, giant swings and zip lines and bloody Mars climbs and all sorts of things, And so we basically play with gravity and just manage the risk,
So tell me, because I imagine what would happen is you guys would get around a table. I'm not saying there might be a few drinks involved, but there'll be the imagination will be going, what's the one or two things that you've thought of that you guys have gone, that's one step too far. I don't mean to do with Bungy, but there must be some adventure tourism ideas that you've kind of gone, that's one step too far, that's just too dangerous. There must be, surely.
Oh, I think there's probably been a few, basically, Pat, what we end up doing, it doesn't matter how crazy the idea is, we then look at it and go, okay, well, how can you do this predictably?
Yep.
And that's the trick, so we just look at it, all of the elements and go, okay, where can this thing go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Look at it and go, well, how can we stop it from going wrong? And if we cannot make it predictable, we just stay right away for it, because none of us like pain,
right.
And we certainly don't want to, we want to live life to the max, not to the minimum and pass away a bit early,
And when you say predictable, I'm assuming what you're saying is sort of measurable, repeatable. There's a formula to it that you can, like, if you weigh this much and it's this high, you need this Bungy. You can predict that.
Correct. Yeah. So you need the right people, the right systems, and then some constants, like exactly that: the weight, the height, the size of the rubber band, and then obviously you've got to get the person either back to where they started from or down to the ground or the water or whatever. Safely. And then if something goes wrong with the system, you've got to be able to rescue them quickly and efficiently, so there's no drama and that,
Not to
so that it all looks dangerous and irresponsible and everything, but it's done incredibly smartly, and we always refer to it's like it's from your shoulders up.
right.
It's what's going on upstairs. You don't have to be a big strapping young All Black, anyone could do this. It's just in your head, and so yeah.
It makes me think it's a very different, far less potentially dangerous example, but in the 90s I used to work with Theatre Sports Auckland, and you'd get an audience that would come along and think, oh, that's amazing, look what they've done, it's all made up, it's all on the cuff, but there was quite a lot of structure and rules to each game you played on stage, and even though it was impromptu content, you knew where you were going, you knew what the rules were, you knew what the out was, so there was actually, it had the appearance of being completely free-form, free-flowing, and no one knows what's going on, but the structure within it was quite tight. I imagine what you're saying with bungee jumping, you have the appearance of holy crap, that person is throwing themselves off a bridge, but the structure within it is very secure and determined as to what's going to happen after that person leaves that platform, because that's the important bit, after they leave the platform.
No, exactly. No, it's just that it's the first meter. The first meter, that's the customer's job, and the rest of it's over to us to make sure they get back safely and with a good buzz on,
In general, not necessarily about your companies, because I want to talk more generally, not think about the negatives, downsides of it. But how safe is it? Like, what is the injury or the mortality to doing it kind of ratio? Because I've never heard of anyone dying bungee jumping. I'm sure accidents have happened around the world, but what is it like? How safe is it when it comes to injury or death?
Well, all of the companies that operate under the AJ Hackett brand or AJ Hackett Bungy brand have jumped over 4 million people, and there's been no fatalities.
Wow, that's amazing.
Some injuries, but there's quite a few people have died bungee jumping around the world with other companies.
Right.
just doing silly shit, and just making stupid mistakes, I won't get into the detail of some of them, but, and some genuine things I just sort of missed that, you could easily miss, but it's like an aeroplane crash, aeroplanes are really safe normally, but if the pilot's drunk, for example, or or they're not maintaining the aircraft properly, then the risk profile starts going up, and it's the same with this, and we're just really staunch about that, and we want people to have fun, like challenge themselves and walk away with an experience that, changes their lives or gives them a big charge to their self-esteem. And they just get on and power on, not without living in fear,
I started that by saying, I don't really want to talk specifically about your company, but that's actually a really good specific thing to put out. You guys have never had death. That's 4 million. That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, like, I'm not to talk about brands, so I won't talk about brands like you didn't, which is the right thing to do. But of recent times we've heard of jet boat deaths and stuff in and around New Zealand from commercial tourist operations. So that sort of thing seems to come with the territory with extreme sports. So to be zero it's unbelievable. You must be so proud of that particular figure.
Yeah, well, we've been, like what we actually set out to do, 32 years ago, when we talk about making things predictable, we were actually the guinea pigs, so to speak. And so we went out and tested everything in all sorts of weird and wonderful places, from minus 20 degrees centigrade up in the Alps out of cable cars to plus 40, nearly 50 degrees in the desert, like to see what would actually happen with various sizes of cords and in different spaces, and just kept narrowing it down, and then finally we figured out actually how to jump safely commercially with large numbers of people, because what a lot of people don't understand is on our sites, for every person that's actually doing an activity, there's a lot more people that aren't, who are spectators, and there's a massive risk there.
Yeah, right.
They're standing on the edge of a cliff watching someone do something. We don't want them falling off.
Yeah.
And so we actually also manage millions of people a year who are just spectating. We've got to make sure they're okay, and they're having fun as well. So it's a fun, serious business, and it'll be around for a very long time.
Check this out. Oh, this is a really good one to watch. So these are the guys in Vanuatu. I know we showed it a little bit before, but this is a particularly good one. Guy in Vanuatu, as I said, I think it's Pentecost Island, isn't it? But anyway, about to jump off this tower. He's got a camera attached to him to show it as he goes down. You ready for this? Here we go. Yep. Vanuatu. We won't play the sound because we don't want to get pulled off YouTube. That is terrifying. Man.
Amazing. They don't have a lot of bounce in them, those ones, but it's very cleverly done. It's amazing.
Well, I guess that's a similar thing, the predictability that you said. They obviously know. They've got their heights. They've got their lengths of vines. I wanted to ask you, you've kind of started on it. I've talked about starting a new podcast, like another series, and calling it The Day Before, because a lot of times when people do something that a lot of us look at and go, holy shit, how did you do that? I always want to know what the crap happened the day before the first jump, for example. So there had to be a first strap the feet up, bungee cord there, and jumping off something significant. Don't steal my idea, people, if you hear this and you like that idea of the podcast, because I quite like it. I love watching documentaries and stuff about the creative process. Even whether it's 6 Days to Air, which is the South Park documentary, or Back and Forth, which is the Foo Fighters documentary, or movies, even like there's that movie, the one about Tom Hanks plays Walt Disney and how they made Mary Poppins. Even though I like the movie, but it's about the creative process. I love those kinds of conversations. And so, I thought about starting up a podcast called The Day Before. So you can be my first slash episode. Tell me about the day before the very first jump. And I guess I'm not meaning the first jump where you put a weight to a bungee and throw it out there sort of thing. But the first time, and I'm assuming it was you, AJ Hackett tested for the first time, no matter what all the maths set up to it, jumping off something significant with bungee cords attached to your feet.
Okay, well, I was a friend of mine, Chris Sigelco, was wanting to produce a video on how to creating bungee, and so anyway, cut a long story short, we'd been through a number of tests. There used to be a department in Auckland called the Department of Scientific Industrial Research, DSIR.
Yep.
And anyway, they looked at some rubber and came back to us with a bit of a formula. We sussed that out and said, okay, right, that's all very well. Now, how do we make the cord? So there was all of that thing. And I used to do a lot of rock climbing, so that was my job to figure out how to actually make the thing and how to rig it. And we knew the bridge we were going to jump off, which is the little one up in Greenhithe. It's only about 20 metres high.
Yep.
Into the harbour there, the upper harbour crossing. But all of our testing, what we do before we jump is we always go, okay, well, here's a weight that's similar to my weight. Throw that off the bridge first. Watch that go. Then if it all looks good, we go, okay, now let's do another one just to be really sure.
Yeah.
So we might do a couple of those just to be comfortable. And then we'd jump. And because it was Chris came to me, he did the first jump, not me. And so 19 meters, he jumped off. I lowered him down into the water, and he swam out. And then it was my turn. I jumped. Then Chris did another one. I did another one. So we did two each. And then what we'd do is we went through the North Island, and we would take turns. The next weekend, it was my turn to go first. Then the following his. And then when we got to the big bridges in the middle of the North Island, where there was, if it went wrong, we're dead because there was no water under them.
Right.
And they were 80 meters high, or the water was a bit shallow.
Okay.
And so I drew the short straw. So I went first on that one. That was about 80 meters. But it's the same thing. What we're really interested in is when you do a test, we've just got to drop. It's not only dropping the weight, but it's seeing that everything works. So lowering it down, seeing that the weight gets to the ground properly, that we can get all the gear back up, because it's no good just bouncing around and then going, right, we can't get up or down. You're stuck. So we would join the testing straight after with the human drops, and it was just a really intense, fun, just great, private. We'd go along and have a few drinks and nice picnic lunch, and just get on it, and afterwards celebrate, and it's great.
So that 80 meter jump, would that have been like the first one? So if you had if the bungee cord had bounced once and then snapped over Greenhithe 20 meters, you might get a bit of a pinky, you might be a bit but you're going to be fine. But the 80 meter one that you're talking about, would that be the first one that, like, if this doesn't work this time, I'm dead?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a real leveler. That's a whole different.
So you've done this 10, 20, 30, 50 times before with weights and with maybe 100 times before. So the maths works. No,
only a few actually, because we were on a mission, Pat. First weekend we did a total of four jumps.
I said all.
The next weekend, Henry and a friend of ours from Christchurch, Martin Jones, joined us in Hamilton. And I think 5 of us did 2 jumps each, so that was 10.
So you're up to 14.
So then up to the Harbour Bridge secretly, early one Sunday morning, just 2.
Okay.
Then we left it for about a month, did a couple more at the Greenhithe Bridge, just with some friends, little ones.
Yep.
But then it was down to the big ones in the middle of the North Island. I think we would have only done
so it's less than 20
total jumps, maybe 25.
Yeah. Okay.
But then same method, measure it up, throw a weight off, see that it works. I think we repeated the weight drop a couple of times, because this was like this has to work, you know, this is scary, a little bit scary, you know. And then, so I jumped, and it was just a huge rush, you know, it was just great. The bigger jumps are amazing. And then it all came together nicely. And so everyone else then took their turn, you know, so.
For you,
but we repeated
for
that
you,
way every time.
For you who had done, you know, a handful of jumps before, and for you who could see the repeatable fashion of it and understood the predictability of it, was it like a significantly bigger rush being up higher with that potential death threat to it than it was over the smaller ones? Like, did you feel, I don't know, whether it was anxiety or excitement or somewhere in between there, raised or heightened, or was it much of a muchness because you knew the science worked?
Well, no, I think it's, I think the first time you do anything, there's something different about that. You know, and so for Chris and I, when we did the very first jumps at the Greenhithe Bridge, you know, we'd spend a lot of time trying to suss this thing out, you know, like before that. And so on the day it was all coming together, and we were just so surprised to see it actually work, you know, like, wow, it actually worked, you know. And so watching this weight bounce, you know, far out, that's looking cool. It was coming a bit close to the bridge on the rebound, but it was exciting, you know. And then to jump at the top of the first rebound, that I've never felt that before, this weightless sort of sensation in space for maybe, let's call it half a second,
right?
You know, and that was like, wow, this is amazing. This is special, you know. And so that first one, then obviously the different height jumps and the situations, there's variations, but you know, I like to think like some of the small jumps are just as exciting, or if not more exciting than the big ones, you know.
Okay.
But you know, like for me, I don't, you know, that particular jump that we were talking about in the middle of the North Island was a bit different in that it was still really early days.
Yep.
And we still weren't really at the end of any real serious testing period where we could categorically say, hey, look, this is totally predictable, it's cool. You know, that probably took another year to where I was like, hey, look, I'm really comfortable with this.
Right. Wow.
The problem we had then was the pressure came on us so heavily from the public, like strangers that just wanted to experience it. So that's when Henry and I, you know, needed to figure out, well, what, you know, it's a bit of a long story, but basically we had to figure out, well, how do you manage large numbers of people and do lots of jumps repeatedly in a day with different weights of people, and how do you rig all of that? How long will a bungee cord last? Because we would make up a bungee cord just for an 80-meter jump and we'd never use it again because the next jump might be 50 meters and it's no good at, you know, so we just, you know, so we were just specializing in very low numbers, just private with mates, experimenting. And then, so getting into what we do now is a radically different step. And no one in the world had ever, you know, ever done that or even dreamt of doing that, you know. And so, you know, we're fortunately, you know, we'd put the time in before we introduced it to the public to really understand all of the risk parameters and what we'd need to do to manage it. And that's paid off, you know. And that's, I suppose it goes back to our earlier discussion today, you know, this managing Corona is the same sort of thing, you know. It's a, you know, it might be a little bit slow at the front end, you've got to take a few hits, but if you get that right, then long term it pays dividends. And it certainly has for us, all of our customers that have jumped over the last 30 years, and I think for New Zealand and all the countries that we work in, you know.
Between that first jump in Greenhithe and the first kind of commercial customer paying for a jump, what was the time frame?
Just under 2 years.
Okay, so still a good amount of planning and stuff going in there.
Yeah, no, and like I was traveling a lot. So was Henry. You know, we'd do our into France skiing. You know, I was on the New Zealand speed skiing team with Henry. You know, Henry was the fastest in the country, and you know, like that was important to us. The you know, moving back and forth, and then we're trying to get back to New Zealand, trying to earn a little bit of money, and then eventually, one thing led to another, and decided to commercialize it, and make it my kind of life ambition to crack this thing properly,
Would it
so we've been able to do that.
Would it be fair to say that one of the things obviously New Zealand's known for, if you talk about New Zealand to international foreigners, especially those in the Western world who kind of know a bit about our trade, etc., they say things like sheep, Lord of the Rings, rugby, and extreme sports, and bungee jumping is one of those things that the world seems to know New Zealand for. Is that a fair? I mean, I am making an assumption because you can't talk to the whole world, but I'm wondering, when you go around the world, whether you're a tourist in in America, or whether you're at home in France, or whatever you're doing, or one of the resorts, do you find that it's a regular occurrence that people recognise Bungy with New Zealand? And if they do they know your name? Does the name AJ Hackett resonate to people around the world because of the association with it? Is it big enough to kind of do that?
Well, for me, I like wherever I am, and I'm originally from New Zealand, and they go, "Oh, well, where's that?" If they don't know where it is.
Yeah.
I go, "That's that All Blacks." The All Blacks. Oh, right, okay. Now I know that. And but then with Bungy, there are people that around the world that know of Bungy. Often they do know originated in New Zealand.
Right. Okay.
But my name is kind of synonymous with Bungy in areas that we work.
Right.
But
okay.
there's a lot of places around the world where there is no Bungy, and so AJ Hackett is a meaningless name in some of these places. But I'm like each day that continue to move on.
So in those places, if you met someone who may know about Bungy, they may associate Bungy with New Zealand, but because they have no branding around that actual thing, it's more like a subject matter. There's no affiliation with AJ Hackett per se.
Well, I suppose let's just say it's 50-50.
Okay.
Some do, some don't. But over time, more and more will.
So that's where the plan is. Is it getting bigger and better? Are you still looking to take over the rest of the world?
It was not really taking over. It's just sharing it. We've got lots of opportunities around the world. But basically what I'm doing, Pat, is we're just sort of basically consolidating our companies, getting through this corona period, the new future, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And then I'm kind of backing off a little bit more, and my kids will actually take over, and it's going to be their challenge to kind of expand what we do around the planet. And we've got an amazing team of people around us, and we're operating in half a dozen different countries now, and there's lots to do, mate. The world's actually a pretty big place.
I've heard that.
It's a small place and a big place, but it's a fun place.
And you predominantly spend most of your time where? Like, where would you think about? I know you say New Zealand is where you're from, but where would your home be? Where would your main residence be?
Well, if you ignore this last 6 months, because this is very unusual.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I traditionally spend about I do about 250 to 300 flights a year.
Wow.
So I'm really, really crazy. I do a huge amount of travel. Now, the good thing about Corona for me is regardless of what happens in the future, I'm probably going to be able to cut that back to about 10% of what I used to do.
Wow.
Because now we've got things like Zoom, and it actually worked quite well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so most of my time is shared between France, Singapore, where I'm a Singapore resident,
Oh, cool.
in Indonesia, Russia, and a little bit in Aussie and a little bit in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I'll be spending obviously now more time in New Zealand. But most of my time over a 12-month period will be in other countries, you know, because I still you know, I've got sort of homes in a few places, or places I consider home.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
we're a bit lucky.
And what about life in Russia? You made friends with Putin yet? Is he a good buddy of yours? I hear that Russia's saying they might have a vaccination. I don't want to get you in trouble or anything, but
okay. Yeah, no, I haven't met Putin yet, but I've got very, very good friends in Russia. I have some amazing relationships here with various people, and I really enjoy the country. It's amazing, and we've got a huge team of people that work for us. We recently opened a brand new site in Moscow. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier, but we just opened it last week, actually.
Wow.
And right in the middle of the city there. It's incredible. And I love Russia. I love the people, and the country is just unbelievably beautiful, you know. Yeah, it's cool.
Amazing. Hey, you mentioned that you were supposed to be getting married, and that's obviously been put off. What's the plans for the wedding now? Not personal details, but is that still on the agenda? Have you got dates set up or anything?
Not yet. We're still trying to figure that one out now, because the problem is half our guests were actually coming from outside of New Zealand.
Of course.
And you can't really expect them to come in and do quarantine.
Yep.
To then go to the wedding, and then maybe there's an outbreak and they can't leave the country or whatever it is, you know, like. So I think we'll just change how we're going to do it, and I'd love to see it happen, you know, before Christmas anyway, if we could, you know.
And of course, the big question is, will you get into your tuxedo, and will your wife be in her wedding dress and go off the Kawato Bridge? Because I understand they'd probably give it to you for free if you were a bride and groom, wouldn't they? Surely, you have to, surely.
Oh no, of course they'll do that anyway. But no, we won't be doing that, Pat.
Hey AJ, I know it's been a few months for us to set this up and actually get together and have a chat, but thank you so much for giving us some time. I do realise you're in lockdown, and some people think lockdown might be a bit of a casual time, but you're a very busy man, and I appreciate your candour with us and your time with us and your experiences and your stories, and it's been a lot of fun. So, dude, stay safe up in there in Auckland. I look forward to you getting back to Christchurch, and good luck connecting with your partner again. I'm sure you're looking forward to that. But just thanks so much for giving us some time to have a chat today.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much, Pat. Really appreciate it, mate. And you have a wonderful day yourself, matey. Okay. Thank you very much.